I'd like to now get all of your opinions. Just do a quick sort of shotgun round of like, what do you actually think the main limitations and the main benefits of building your startup with no code are? So maybe we could start with Emmanuel on this one and go around.
I think where no code is not the best is if you need to build like a completely new user experience. So if you think of the swipe, on Tinder, like when you have this Tinder element, you can use that on Bubble, but you're going to need an engineer to build that new experience. So there's nothing that, it's not like a startup is fit for no code or no code. It's more, do I need to bring some engineering talent to extend the platform when something is missing? And so when something is missing, it's going to be for new interactions, like visually, or back to my initial example, like writing a custom algorithm of some kind, whether it's for optimization or some processes that can be described in the case of Pubble, like our workflow-based language, which is, create something in the database, send a charge an email, charge a credit card, send an email, these kind of things. Regarding, the platform you're choosing, if you're trying to build something for the Apple Watch, I don't think any no-code platform has tried to get there. I don't think this is a priority either, even though Thunkable might be going there sooner than others because of their iOS focus. But so you have to choose the right platform, the right no-code platform for the platform you're targeting. But that's really the only thing. The question is really not, am I going to be able to build that on no-code or not? Is, can I build that entirely on my own, or do I need to find help to extend the platform? And in this case, it's going to come down to writing new algorithm and new user experiences.
I love that. No, I think that's a really great point you brought up right there. Arun, what do you think some of the main sort of benefits and limitations are?
Yeah, in terms of benefits, you're talking speed, security, a lot of the things that we already talked about, I think is there. I think the biggest thing is that all of a sudden, and one of the things that we've seen that's been really powerful is that the people who are the creatives, the entrepreneurs, the people with ideas, the designers, all of a sudden they're also now the developers. And so with all that's lost in translation between, hey, I have an idea, I draw it on a napkin, I design it in some design tool, and then I pass it to the developer, and then I lose so much in translation. All of a sudden, there's nothing lost in translation because the designer is the developer, the creator is the developer. And I think that's the biggest power. So all of a sudden, the people who have the problem are now the people empowered to solve their own problems. And that is so amazing. And I think that's, one of the first times that's really happened. And I think it's so cool to see that. And this is when you start seeing, I know on Thunkable we've seen this, and I think many of the other tools as well. There are apps that have been created that in a million years I would have never imagined. And we have a great team of engineers and product people and designers and creator success folks, all of whom have great ideas and work really hard to build things. But so many of the apps that have been built on Thunkable are things that we would have never thought about because it's problems that we didn't know exist. And similarly, the people who were building those solutions never had the capability, never had the connections to get them built, and all of a sudden they can. And so I think that's really cool when the person who has the problem is now the person who's actually solving that problem. And that's, I think, the biggest win to no code. And then, everything else we talked about. In terms of, I think, restraints, I think really what Emmanuel touched upon with design and kind of developing cutting edge stuff, I think that's where you run into problems because with, for example, Thunkable, you can build really, beautiful designs, but we make it really easy to build standard things. We make it really easy to, you put a button in and it'll look like an iPhone button on an iPhone and an Android button on an Android device and a web button on the web. But if you're trying to do some super custom thing that doesn't, really exist as a design pattern, you can do it, but it's going to be a lot more complicated to figure out because we obviously make that harder to find. I think that's one limit. The other thing that maybe just I'll add to what Emmanuel said is if you're building something, I think just super large with lots and lots of code, a lot of these platforms, are structured in a way where you have, some areas where you're building functionality. And I think, at some point, if you have, 100,000 lines of code and functionality or whatever, at some point it more just becomes larger and a little unwieldy. And so I think I haven't seen a thing to the point yet, which is like, oh, you can't build this with no code. It's more of at some point there's a trade-off of, hey, if I have to bring in an engineer and I have to do all these custom things and I have to, have a way bigger kind of page to add my, Thunkable, its blocks or whatever it may be on your platform. At that point, there's a trade-off which says, okay, Is it going to be more complicated and convoluted to do it in no code or in kind of regular code? And I think that's really the question. It's not so much can I do it, but where am I going to start coming up against the limits where the time trade-offs and money trade-offs don't make it worth it anymore?
Awesome answer. Yeah, and I think those limits are kind of continually being pushed as well. So that's a very exciting thing, and that comes from the energy of a lot of people on this panel and other people building platforms. Levon, what do you think are some of the benefits and limitations of building your startup with no code?
Yeah, I think Arun framed it very well for the benefits, but I will just add one thing. Apart from not having to write any code, you don't need to take care of any infrastructure, like deploying database servers or taking care of load balancing. There are so many very complex technical things that usually have to be thought about and planned for, and these are just completely taken care of with all of these no-code platforms, right? You don't worry about that. You just think about what do you want to build, and then you go ahead and build it, and you just when you're done, you just with a click of a button, you deploy that to web, and off you go, right? Some of the limitations or let's say drawbacks of no code that we hear from people when we talk to them is that they're worried about not owning the source code. And for some, it's like this sense of possession, that you want to own the whole thing, not just what you get it as an end product, but what lies underneath of it, right, under the hook. And for some people, it's a problem that they don't own it, and they can't customize it, right, and they can't easily move the source code from one hosting to another. But that just takes a little bit more faith when you choose the platform that you're going to invest your time and some money probably and effort into building your product, that you need to make the right decision. But that's all. I think when you compare the advantages and potential disadvantages, there is it's a no-brainer. The advantages are just overweight, with a big ratio.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree on that one as well. Michael?
I think one of the things that, especially early on in your startup's life, but I think this continues to be true as you go through, is that one of the largest advantages you can have is having as short a possible time for innovation cycle to take place. And the smaller and smaller you can make that loop from thinking of an idea, testing it with the market in real life, getting feedback and integrating that feedback. If you can do that 2 times, 5 times, 10 times, probably 100 times faster than your competition, then you're going to smoke them. And that is a huge, huge benefit that I really don't think code can ever live up to. I think one of the places where no code doesn't work so well is where what you're doing in your startup, in the business you're building, is technical innovation rather than business innovation, operational innovation, product innovation. And I think no code is really great for quickly taking the things that are well established, that are almost becoming commodity, the things that we know how to do really well, and applying them into a different sphere, applying them in a different way, and remixing them and combining them together in a novel way. But I think where what you're doing is pushing forward the sheer limits of technology, I don't think that is where no code is very good. And I think that is that's exactly what developers are meant to be doing. And I think it's almost quite exciting that no code can kind of free up the developers from working on all that other stuff and put that in the hand of entrepreneurs, operations people, product people, and they can just focus on the really, really hard problems, which moves the state of the art forward.
Yeah, maybe to finish this off, I think it's pretty clear that this is incredibly inclusive. And even though it starts with this movement, it is inclusive to developers as well, as Emmanuel pointed out. And it's only with incredible development talent that we will get to the place where no code will be able to build 99% of all solutions out there. I think we're probably about 90 right now, but I think that's continually being pushed. If you ask me in terms of the limitations and benefits, I think it's very clear technically. It's way easier and quicker to learn. It's quicker to build, and it is faster to iterate and deploy, and cheaper. So like for me, it's very obvious that no code is the early stage of any startup. I think limitations are some of the things that have already been mentioned very well throughout this presentation. But those limits are constantly being pushed as well.